Before we begin, put your phone on silent, turn off the lights, lay back, get comfortable, and just listen. Because tonight's story isn't just another nightmare. It's something that could easily happen to you. If you enjoy true horror stories that get under your skin, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with a friend who loves late-night chills. And let me ask you this. Have you ever had a dream so real that even after you woke up, you weren't sure you were actually awake? Tell me your creepiest dream or sleep experience down in the comments. I read every single one. Alright, deep breath, let's get into tonight's story. This all unfolded over a period of about 3 to 4 years when I was a child, and I don't recall exactly when the first dream started, but it became a recurring semi-lucid nightmare that happened every couple of months. From what I can remember, it usually began with me lying in bed, though the view wasn't from my eyes. Instead, it felt like I was watching myself from above, as if through a ceiling-mounted security camera. And that detached perspective always unsettled me. I would try to drift or move towards my body, but I was only able to turn my head and glance around the room. And even though I was aware it was a dream, the fear never left me. Once I calmed down a bit, I began noticing unusual things in my bedroom. The first thing was always the digital clock on my nightstand, which ticked backward, and that usually triggered the realization that something was wrong. Then other oddities would appear, like crayon sketches taped randomly on the walls, and furniture, childish drawings of people holding hands, all smiling, with a smaller figure among them, presumably me, and a house with a blue roof in the background. I didn't remember drawing them, and I wasn't a kid who drew much anyway. And another constant detail was a toy train on the floor. It stood out because I had lost that toy years earlier, but still there it was always in a different place on the floor. After I would study the room for a while, I'd feel an irresistible pull to look toward the window. And right on cue, a man would appear outside inches from the glass. He had short gray hair and what looked like a gash on his left temple, and that's all I can recall about his appearance. He would watch me sleep for a moment before starting to claw at the window, as if trying to pry it open, and that was always when I woke up. Sometimes I'd rush to the window, other times I was too petrified to move, but I always checked. I didn't even know what I was looking for: a fingerprint, a smudge, claw marks, but there was never any sign of him. After the 4th time, I finally spoke to my parents about it, and my mom explained that recurring dreams weren't unusual for someone my age, and my dad reminded me that they were always nearby if I needed them. I nodded as if reassured, but it didn't help much. Noticing my unease, my dad took me outside to look around the house. We searched everywhere, but found nothing, no footprints or marks on the window. Still, that offered little comfort. By then it had been about a year, with the dream happening every 3 months or so. 4 times in a year wasn't constant, but I knew it wasn't random either. After that 4th occurrence, the dream stopped for a while, and 6 months passed without a single nightmare. Life gradually returned to normal, and I started thinking it was over. But then, out of nowhere, it returned. Everything in the dream was exactly the same: the drawings, the train, the clock. But something about it felt even more terrifying. I couldn't put my finger on it at first until I noticed that the window was open, and as soon as I realized that, I snapped awake. What followed was about 5 minutes of complete paralysis. I was awake yet frozen in place. My mind was screaming at me to check the window, but I couldn't move, and to make things worse, I felt a distinct chill in the room, as though cold air was pouring in from outside. I was convinced the window was wide open, and those few minutes were some of the most terrifying of my life. Eventually I managed to move and rushed to the window, but it was locked. Still, I couldn't fall back asleep that night. Somehow I got through the next day, but I never stopped thinking about that dream. In the following months, I began to prepare myself each night, mentally bracing for the dream, and oddly enough it worked. The next time I had it, I wasn't nearly as frightened, and I even skipped checking the window afterward. And over time, the fear continued to fade. Yet something still lingered. It was subtle, but enough that I decided to talk to my parents about it again. This time they listened more closely, and I gave them every detail I could remember, something I hadn't done before. As I described the man's appearance, specifically the cut on his forehead, my parents exchanged a look, and my dad interrupted and asked if I was certain about the cut. I confirmed, and he glanced at my mom in a way that told me they knew something I didn't. I asked what was going on, but they just said it was nothing to worry about. I didn't push further, not wanting to upset them, but still the way they reacted stuck with me. A few days later, they sat me down for a more serious talk. It wasn't dramatic, just a quiet explanation. And my mom did most of the talking. When I was very young, there had been a man named Kevin, whom they referred to as Uncle Kevin, though he wasn't family. He was a close college friend of my dad's and helped watch me when both my parents worked, and apparently there had been some kind of falling out. My dad didn't go into detail, just said it was serious enough that Kevin was no longer welcome near our family, especially me, and that was the end of their friendship. I asked what caused the split, but they wouldn't elaborate. They emphasized it had nothing to do with me. The last thing they told me was that Kevin had a visible scar on his forehead from a car crash before I was born, and they didn't spell anything out, but I connected the dots. Later that night, after my mom had gone to bed, my dad stayed up with me. He seemed like he had more to say. He suggested that the dreams might be my mind's way of sorting through early memories, things I experienced before I could fully understand or remember them. He explained how close I used to be with Kevin, how I would cry when he left and wanted him to read me bedtime stories, and my dad said he couldn't figure out any other reason I would know about the scar. I had no memory of Kevin at all, and even now I can't recall anything about him. Life went on, and a few more months passed. I might have had the dream once or twice more, but they were far less frequent. Then, sometime in the 4th year, everything changed. One night after waking up from the dream, I instinctively looked at my window and I saw something move. Just a brief flicker, but enough to convince me someone had been there. Fear flooded back instantly, and I screamed for my parents. My dad ran outside while my mom held me, and when he came back, they whispered to each other and called the police. I stayed in their room the rest of the night, and I never heard sirens or voices other than theirs. The next day, my dad admitted he had seen what looked like faint footprints under my window, and I asked if he thought it was Kevin. He said that wasn't possible, we had moved, and Kevin didn't know our new address. My dad reassured me that nothing bad would happen again, and he turned out to be right. I never had that dream after that night. My parents rarely talk about it anymore, and I've stopped asking. What haunts me most is the idea that maybe someone really had been watching me each time I dreamed it. Could someone have been spying on me for years? Was it Kevin? Or someone else my mind had latched onto through memory association? I've looked into it and read about similar cases, but I still don't understand how it could be possible. Maybe it was a sound or a shadow. My brain interpreted that way, I just don't know. One thing I'm almost certain of is, my parents never actually called the police that night. I don't think I'll ever know the full truth, but if I ever do, I'll be sure to share it. I'll try to keep this short. Most nights, I need some sort of background noise to fall asleep. It helps me drift off quickly. Sometimes it's a documentary on astronomy, sometimes it's a storm sound recording, and other times it might be a quiet podcast about history. You get the idea. I tend to dream vividly, and whatever audio is playing when I fall asleep often shows up in my dreams. Like if it's a video of people hiking, I'll probably dream I'm out on a trail somewhere. And this method also helps me avoid nightmares, something I dealt with a lot as a kid. This took place a couple of weeks ago when I stayed over at my friend Casey's house. It was a typical weekend sleepover, and without my usual audio, I had to fall asleep. The regular way that wasn't a problem, just meant my dreams would be more random than usual. There were 3 of us there, me, Casey, and Leo, and Casey's parents were out of town, which is why we had the house to ourselves. He's got these huge comfy couches in the living room, where we all crashed for the night. That night I had one of the most intense dreams I've had in a while. I was out in the ocean on this tiny sailboat. I don't even know why I've never even stepped on one before, and the sea was rough, and the sky had this strange purple-gray hue. The wind was loud but not scary. It felt cinematic, almost unreal. And suddenly the boat jolted. I didn't see what caused it, but I felt it hit something. Whatever it was, it threw the boat off balance and cracked part of it underneath, and water started rushing in fast. I tried to block the hole with my hoodie, not that it did anything. Panic set in, real panic. And right when the boat began sinking, a dolphin leapt from the waves, made direct eye contact, and said in perfect English, "Wake up." That jolted me awake instantly, and normally I'm groggy after waking up. But this felt different, though. I couldn't say why, just yet. I looked around, scanning the room for anything strange. Everything seemed normal. My friends were still out cold, and nothing looked out of place. You know that weird moment right after waking when things don't fully register? That's where I was. And a few seconds later my mind caught up, and that's when I noticed a strange sound coming from upstairs. It wasn't muffled like a leaky tap, it was steady and loud like a hose, and that probably explained the water imagery in my dream. I sat there puzzled, trying to make sense of the noise. Then, like a complete fool, I got up to check it out. I tiptoed up the stairs, staying as quiet as I could, and the sound grew louder with every step. It was definitely water running full blast, and it was coming from the upstairs bathroom at the end of the hall. The door was slightly ajar, and I could see the sink from the hallway. One of the handles had been turned all the way. Water was flooding out at full pressure, and that couldn't have happened by itself. It didn't make sense. I got close to the doorway, ready to step in, but something held me back. The bathroom upstairs is pretty spacious. There's a long counter, a bathtub with a curtain, and a tight corner where the toilet sits. A lot of blind spots, and for all I knew, someone could have been hiding just out of sight. My stomach dropped. Something about it didn't feel right. I backed away and ran downstairs to wake Casey. I shook him hard and told him something was off. He was groggy at first, but the urgency in my voice must have cut through because he sat up quickly. "What's wrong?" he asked. And I told him the faucet upstairs was blasting, and I thought someone might be in the house. That got his full attention. We left Leo asleep on the couch and crept back upstairs, and when we got to the bathroom, Casey didn't even pause. He shoved the door open and stepped in, and I was not ready for what happened next. Out of nowhere, a person lunged from around the corner and tackled Casey. It was so sudden. One moment Casey was upright, the next he was on the floor with this guy swinging a piece of PVC pipe, like he meant to cause serious harm. I didn't hesitate. I dove at the guy, trying to pull him off. Casey, we both struggled with him on the floor, but he was bigger and stronger than either of us. It was chaos. Eventually he shoved us aside and bolted, racing down the stairs. And by the time we made it out to the front step, he was gone. The cops arrived about half an hour later, but they couldn't do much. They found that one of the downstairs windows was wide open. It had been left unlocked, and Casey's place doesn't have security cameras, so we didn't have any footage to give them. According to the officers, it was probably just a random burglary attempt that escalated, but we weren't so sure. I mean, why would a thief intentionally make noise by turning on a faucet? It felt like a setup, like someone wanted to lure one of us upstairs, but if stealing was the goal, why create that kind of risk? It seemed more like he had something darker in mind. Casey believes that the guy knew his parents were out of town and expected him to be home alone. And if that's true, then it's possible the intruder intended to seriously hurt or even kill Casey. I don't even want to think about what might have happened if I had walked into that bathroom by myself. This happened on a Friday night a few months ago. My girlfriend's parents were headed out of town for the weekend, some anniversary getaway or something like that. So naturally, my girlfriend Kara asked me to stay over at her place. Her parents are usually pretty uptight, and sleeping over in her room is totally against the rules. But with them gone for a couple of days, we figured no harm, no foul. Kara lives in one of those cookie-cutter suburban neighborhoods where every house looks identical. By 10 p.m., it's so quiet that the whole street feels abandoned. That vibe always made me uneasy when I had to leave late at night. so I was honestly glad to stay put this time. I got there around 8, brought some snacks, and we threw on a movie, just our usual routine. Kara's bedroom is on the second floor and faces the backyard. You can just barely make out the dense line of trees at the edge of the property from her window. The yard isn't well lit, so at night it looks like an endless black void beyond the glass. Her bed's a queen size, which gave us plenty of room to stretch out without getting in each other's space. I'll spare the unimportant stuff. At some point we turned the TV off and drifted off to sleep around midnight. I don't remember falling asleep exactly, but I remember the dream vividly, and it was disturbing. Before I get into it, I should mention that I've only experienced a false awakening dream a couple of times before, and this was one of them. For anyone unfamiliar, it's a surreal, almost spiritual type of dream. Experiences like this are why I believe there's more to the world than what we can see. In the dream, I jolted awake after hearing a door slam somewhere downstairs, and a second later I heard someone sprinting up the stairs. I sat up instantly, ready to confront the intruder, but I didn't move. Something held me back. Kara's room looked exactly the same as when we'd gone to bed. Everything was in place except one thing. A narrow beam of yellow light glowed beneath the bedroom door. It was just a sliver, but for whatever reason, I couldn't take my eyes off it. My confidence drained away. My vision tunneled in on that line of light, and the rest of the room faded into darkness. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs and thundered toward the door, but I stayed rooted in place, paralyzed. Then silence. Still fixated on that glow, I suddenly heard a voice, a woman's voice, cruel and mocking. She insulted everything: my looks, my beliefs, my future. But then it got worse. The voice began to mention things about me, deeply personal things that no one else knew, not even Kara. Events from my past, words I had spoken, actions I had taken, stuff no outsider could possibly know. Soon, one voice became 2, then 3, until it felt like 100 voices screaming my darkest, most buried secrets. It was as if someone was pulling the most shameful parts of me out and putting them under a spotlight. I couldn't take it. I flung the covers off, ran across the room, and yanked the door open to confront whatever was behind it. But the moment I did, the entire house went dark, every light blinked out, and I was swallowed by a cold so sharp it hurt. For a moment I felt like I'd stepped into another realm. I stumbled back to the bed, dazed, and dove under the covers like a scared little kid. And then I woke up, or at least I thought I did. I sat up, still shaken, but telling myself the nightmare had ended. But when I looked toward the door, I nearly screamed. That same yellow glow was under the door, just like in the dream. Then I heard it again, the door downstairs slamming, followed by those heavy footsteps racing up the stairs. The exact sequence started all over again. The steps halted at the door, the voices started in the same order, and I couldn't stop myself. I ran to the door, threw it open, and was again met with that icy blackness just like before. When I finally woke up for real, my heart was pounding. I was pretty sure I was awake, but still so thrown off by the double false awakening that I wasn't completely convinced. Kara was peacefully asleep beside me, something that hadn't happened in the dream, and that's when I knew I was really awake. In the dream, I'd never looked over at her. I started calming down, but when I sat up and looked at the door, my blood ran cold. That same strip of light was there, exactly the same. It made no sense. Kara and I were alone, and all the lights were supposed to be off. I stared at it, confused. Then came the unmistakable sound of footsteps downstairs. Someone was in the house. I realized immediately that we were being robbed. I grabbed my phone and quietly called the police, whispering what was happening. I tiptoed over to the door, making sure it was locked, then crept back and woke Kara, gently covering her mouth to stop her from making any noise, and thankfully she didn't scream. The next few minutes were tense, but eventually the police arrived. They kicked in the front door, and a loud commotion followed. When things seemed safe, I went downstairs and saw 2 masked guys being led into a police cruiser in handcuffs. I spoke with the officers, thanked them, and headed back upstairs. And even though it was late, Kara's parents rushed home after hearing what had happened. They weren't even angry that I had stayed over. In fact, they were grateful. About a week later, Kara called me with an update. The cops told her parents that the two intruders admitted to breaking in after seeing a Facebook post about the trip, assuming no one would be home. Oddly enough, what unsettles me most isn't the break-in itself, it's that dream. I can understand how the sound of the intruders entering the house might have influenced my dream. That part makes sense. But the content, the specific disturbing details I can't explain. Kara thinks I might have some hidden trauma buried in my subconscious, but I don't like that theory. And as for the light under the door, there's no way I could have seen it. While lying down, I couldn't have imagined it with that level of detail. Yet I saw it clearly, and even now, I can still picture it vividly. I don't even have to close my eyes. It's not like it blocks my sight or anything, but it's always there, tucked away in the back of my mind. I assume it'll fade over time, but a part of me worries that it's burned into my brain forever.